Welcome to Embrace Joy, where we are walking the road to restoration. My name is Joy LaPiccolo. I am a certified life coach specializing in working with trauma survivors, and we have been talking about grief. So, life as we know it can change in an instant, particularly for those of us who have faced a diagnosis with a chronic illness. And a diagnosis can turn your world upside down, and it challenges everything you knew about yourself and your future. So for me, I have been sick since birth, but I have been seeking answers since then and have recently, well, actually 2017 was finally diagnosed with a very rare genetic disorder. But I had received several other diagnoses along the way, which are questionable now that we know the truth. But the chronic illness didn't just affect my body, that news of having a chronic illness, it profoundly affected my heart, my soul, my spirit. And I have worked with a lot of other people who have chronic illness and different aspects of chronic illness. And the grief that accompanies a chronic illness is deep and it needs to be addressed. And it can often come by surprise. And so when we talk about grief, some of us think that grief is related to death. But as I talked in the previous podcast, um, grief is not just associated with death. We talked about the grief of the loss of innocence related to abuse, sexual abuse. We talked about the grief after leaving a domestic violence situation. So today, let's talk a little bit about the grief in the context of an illness. And I want to touch on today also about how you can be the best advocate for yourself and also how you can help others as a tool to help your emotional healing. And always, I focus on God's word because his word is comfort. It offers us understanding and strength no matter what challenging journey that we're on. So when chronic illness enters your life, you start to think of all the different losses that you have, and it is a very heavy weight when you sit in it. And there's losses of health, of course, certainly dreams, and sometimes even relationships. And I know for me, my illness put an extra tax on my relationships, and it caused a lot of hurt emotionally in that situation. And of course, the dreams that I had in those relationships and dreams outside of those relationships and other people that I've talked to have also experienced the same thing. And so with any loss, there's stages, and I know many of you know the stages of grief, but I'm just going to go through them today as a reminder that you're actually normal. What you're feeling is very, very normal. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross outlined 5 stages of grief, and those are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And these stages are often talked about with grief of a loved one. But like I said, it can fit with any type of a loss that you have faced. So the first stage, let's talk about the first stage, is denial. Often we use that as a shield to protect ourselves from the full impact of the loss, like, for example, a diagnosis. So when you hear the words chronic illness, it can feel unbearable. And you might find yourself thinking, this cannot be happening, or maybe the doctors are wrong. It's an understandable reaction. Denial gives us space to absorb, slowly absorb the reality of what they've said without being overwhelmed at once. So, denial is not a bad thing. That's a coping skill to help you absorb what the loss has been of them telling you that. So, one of the things that I was thinking of is in this stage is the story of Job. Job faced unimaginable loss and suffering, including health. Despite his pain, though, Job initially refused to accept his circumstances. Yet through it all, God remained faithful. So even in our moments of denial, God is still present. He is ready to walk with us through the next stages. We talk a lot about Psalms 34:18, which says, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed spirit." And that's the case with denial. You are broken and you want to deny the brokenness, but we're going to get to the point of acceptance. So, stage two is anger. As denial begins to wane, anger often rises. Now, of course, with these stages of grief, you don't go 1 through 5. You can go backwards and forwards, and you might go from denial to depression and to blame and to acceptance and then back to anger. So it's not a linear journey. But the anger that you feel with a diagnosis sometimes may be directed to yourself. Or, maybe I should have done this, or maybe I should have done that, or the anger may be directed to your body. Why is it did not work like it was supposed to work? Anger towards doctors. Woo! I had a lot of anger issues with doctors, and some of them I spoke very harshly towards because of the anger over what they had said or not said. And then anger with God is very understandable. And God can handle your anger. He can. He knows you're upset. And you might be asking when you get that diagnosis, why me? Why now? Anger is a natural response because sometimes you feel like life has betrayed you. And with anger, it's a reaction to the loss of control. And if you feel an injustice or suffering, it's because it's something that you didn't choose. I had one doctor along the way that he had no idea what was going on with me. But one of the things he said was, you need to be prepared that in 6 months you will be in a wheelchair. And you just need to accept that. And you're going to need someone to take care of you 24/7. Ooh, some major anger came out, not just to him, but anger at the fact that I did not have any control over my body and the progression of my symptoms. And so, when you think of Psalms, King David had a lot of anger issues. Psalms 13, for example, David cries out, "How long, Lord, will you forget me forever?" King David has very raw honesty throughout the Psalms. He reminds us that it's okay to be direct towards God, and it's part of the human experience is to have that anger. The key is not to stay there. So God, yes, God invites us to bring our anger or any type of emotions to Him. He can handle our emotions. 1 Peter 5:7 talks about that we can cast all our anxiety on Him because He cares for you. It's what we do with the anger that is so important. We don't want to stay in that anger. And we're going to walk through these stages of grief. Stage 3, bargaining. In the bargaining stage, you might find yourself making deals, whether with God, yourself, your doctors. Oh, maybe you might be saying, if I do this treatment, then maybe it'll get better. Or, oh, if you heal me, I promise to live differently. And, this stage is about longing for a way out. Again, it's another type of coping skills, trying to figure out how you can have hope in the midst of a terrible situation, hoping that maybe something or someone can reverse the diagnosis. So, the bargaining stage, I was at one doctor's office and he was very thorough, which I didn't have a whole lot of doctors that were very thorough. And he tested me for, I don't even remember what all and he came in to go over all the results. And his response was, you don't have MS, you don't have lupus, but I don't know what you have. My response was, can you do additional testing, please? Because we need to figure out what is wrong. Now, to me, that was a form of bargaining, and it's also a form of denial, is because I did not want that answer. I wanted him to continue looking for an answer because there had to be something better than the answer that he gave. So when you think of bargaining, even Jesus in his humanity had a form of bargaining in the Garden of Gethsemane. So he prayed, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. This example shows us that while it's natural to ask for a way out, true peace comes from surrendering to God's will. It's about trusting that even in our pain, God is working for our good. And it took me a while to get to that point, to rest in that peace that God is working for our good. So, with chronic illness, the grief of chronic illness, you go through stage 4, which is depression. Depression is the stage where you actually sit with the reality of the illness and sink in all the implications that it's going to have on your life. The losses are deep, the loss of health, the future you envision, again, relationships with people who may struggle to understand your pain. So those relationships just are not capable of handling your illness. And the stage of depression can be filled with sadness and isolation, and you may feel hopeless. I just want to applaud you for listening in, not sitting with that pain, but wanting to find out if there's a way that you can grow and grieve and live with a chronic illness without it being your identity. I so want you to know that this is a form of trauma. Whenever you experience a loss, it's a form of trauma, and there's a way to heal from that trauma. So, with depression, the Bible has a lot of examples of people who struggle with depression. In Lamentation, you read the book of Lamentations, it's full of examples. And in there, Jeremiah says, I remember my affliction and my wandering, and my soul is downcast within me. But in the same breath, Jeremiah remembers God's faithfulness. So Lamentations 3:19 through 24 says, "Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope because of the Lord's great love. We are not consumed." Even our darkest moments, God's love remains steadfast. Jeremiah reminds us that God is our refuge and he never abandons us. So let's get to stage 5. Again, it's not a linear journey, and I understand that, and I'm here to help you through this. But stage 5 is acceptance. And acceptance is not being okay with the illness or its impact, but rather it's coming to terms with the new reality. It's about finding a way to live a fulfilling life despite the limitations that you have or the uncertainties. Acceptance can bring peace, but it is so important to remember that it doesn't necessarily mean the grief is over. Chronic illness or any other trauma or loss can be triggered by different challenges that come up. So please understand that you haven't gone back, you take 2 steps forward, 3 steps back. That's not true. Things can come up and you might falter, but you still have faith, you still have hope, you still have that acceptance, but you're still grieving the life that, wasn't, God did not design chronic illness. Satan did. Satan wants us to fail. But God can make for good. Romans 8:28 says that God will make for good. He'll work all things out for good for those who are called according to his purpose. So with acceptance, one of the things I was thinking of is the Apostle Paul. He is an example of acceptance. You talk about hardship, health, emotional, mental, spiritual. He went through it all. And 2 Corinthians 12, he writes, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. For when I am weak, then I am strong." So that's 2 Corinthians 12, 9 through 10. Acceptance of your chronic illness does not mean defeat. It means you are allowing God's strength to shine through your weakness. Now, as we go through each stage of chronic illness, one of the things I want to make sure you know, and I wish I had known this earlier on in my medical journey, is that we are our own advocate. So when we get done with the denial, we get done with the anger, we get to acceptance, we start to fight. And being a patient advocate means standing up for yourself, ensuring that your voice is heard in medical appointments. Speak up about what treatment decisions that you want to make, not just what treatment decisions they want you to make. There's so many things that you can educate yourself on your condition and then ask questions and be active in participating in your healthcare. So being a patient advocate, your own patient advocate, is essential because you are the expert on your body. I know what tests have already been done. I know what my body feels like every single day. And unfortunately, because of the genetic illness that I have, when I ask someone, have you ever heard of this? they kind of pause and they say, well, I think I read something about that in med school. And in most textbooks, it may be a couple sentences, which doesn't mean that they know anything about my diagnosis. And so I needed to educate myself in order to speak up. And actually, that helped me go through the grief process faster because I started focusing on focusing on answers rather than focusing on coping skills that were not working, for example. So, educating yourself, knowledge is power. Research your condition. Now, if you have to carry around a binder in order to explain things to a doctor, do it. Learn about treatment options. Stay informed on any latest developments. I love looking up to see what the latest research studies are. I may not understand what I'm reading because I do not have a medical degree, but I do my best to educate myself on what the doctors have found, which there have been some changes recently. So I encourage you to do the same. I don't know what illness you have. I don't know how long you've had it, but I want you to know that you are the best expert, the expert on your body. So by being a strong advocate, be sure to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask your healthcare team for clarification. Bringing somebody along with you to ask questions to help you understand what they're saying is another important step. Find the right medical team. If you are in your gut saying, you know what, I don't think this person is right for me, you fire them, you move on to the next medical professional. It's okay to do that. Like I said, I wish I had known that earlier on, but I have over time built up a medical team that listens to me, that respects me. And I also have support from friends, and my family does their best in supporting me. They don't understand, what's going on, but also online communities. We have such a great support network through social media for chronic illness survivors and thrivers. So we understand each other, what we've gone through, if there's been medical gaslighting, or if treatments have worked or not worked, we're able to support each other. So if you're listening in and you are needing more support from other people who have experienced something like a chronic illness, reach out to me and I can connect you with other people, and we can talk one-on-one of things that I have learned, things that you have learned. But being a patient advocate, be sure to communicate clearly. Uh, Practice how you're going to communicate with your doctors. Preparing lists of questions before your appointments, and then take notes during the visit. If you're unable to write, ask them to have the nurse in with you to go ahead and take the notes so you can take those home to go over later. Ask them for a very detailed summary of what they're doing. And if they're not willing to do that, they're not the right person on your medical team. Trust your instincts. If something feels off, you can ask for a second opinion, always second opinion. And if you have read up and said, you know what, would you run this lab test? And they're saying, no, we don't really need to do that. In my opinion, I would like to rule out A, B, and C. And I would like you to do that lab test, even if it's not something that you normally run. Speak up. As Christians, we are called to be stewards of the body God has given us. even when it's not functioning the way we would like. 1 Corinthians 6:19 through 20 says our bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit. So when I say advocate for yourself, it's not just a practical necessity, it's a spiritual responsibility because you're being a good steward of the body that God has given for you. Now, I talked a little bit about how another way to grieve, to go through the healing journey, is by helping others. So when we stand up for ourselves, we give ourselves a voice, we are stepping forward into acceptance. When we focus on others during the journey, it kind of takes ourselves out of denial, takes ourselves out of the anger picture and start focusing on other things. So when you've gone through other types of suffering, when we are able to reach out to others who are suffering, it turns our mess into a message. And pointing people to the hope of Christ and his love and his strength and his comfort gives us it's a unique ability to empathize with others who are walking the same path. One of the ways that you can do that to help others during this journey is to share your story. And again, sharing your story takes you out of that denial mode, takes you out of that anger mode. Your story has power. By sharing your journey, you can encourage others who feel alone or misunderstood, especially if there are people who they think they're the only ones. So after my diagnosis, I had someone that I came across on Instagram who should put in their post the diagnosis that I had. And I thought I was the only one. This person actually understands. And so I reached out to her on direct messaging and I asked her if she would be open in telling me how her journey was, what she has found, what she has tried. And what she said was she was very open, and I was so thankful for that. But as she shared her story, she pointed me out to resources that she had found. And I didn't feel alone. I actually felt validated. It wasn't something just the doctors had said. Now I understood what the doctors meant because of her sharing her personal story. And we can do the same thing. No matter what you have experienced, your story is so powerful. Another way you can help others is offering practical support. So you may not be able to drive anymore. So taking them to appointments may not be something that you can do, but just being a listening ear, offering small bits of kindness, prayer can make a big difference. If you are someone that is able to help run errands or go to a doctor's appointment or go get groceries for someone, that is something that you can do, is a way to help others. Be a source of hope. All of us need someone in our corner, offering them hope and pointing them towards Christ. He is the great physician. And, don't write away their pain, when you say, oh, well, you'll get better. And I hope, and, this is just a bad day. This is not the end of your life. And that's not the answer. Because in a lot of ways, there may not be a cure or treatment yet. And so just saying, well, it's just a bad day, tomorrow will be better. You don't know. So being a source of hope and compassion, understanding the person where they're at, accepting them for where they're at, and then giving them that encouragement. this lady that I had met on social media, she not only shared her personal journey, but she pointed me to a support group for people who have rare diseases like mine. So there are support groups out there for chronic illness. If you're interested in finding out more about a particular type of support group, I may be able to connect you with someone. Obviously, I don't have all the answers. So reach out to me and then we can figure out if there is a support group for you. Never do this alone. So grieving the losses that come with chronic illness requires faith, requires perseverance and hope. And with each stage of grief, it has its own challenges. And we can take heart in knowing that we really are never walking this path alone. God is with you, offering comfort, strength, and peace. Romans 5, 3-5 offers us such a powerful reminder. It says, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings because we know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance, character, and character, hope. And hope does not put us to shame because God's love has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given to us. Powerful verse. In this midst of chronic illness, knowing that God is producing in you perseverance, character, and hope, it helps you to advocate for yourself. I hope it helps you grow deeper in your relationship with God. The diagnosis that you received is just that, a diagnosis. It is not the rest of your story. Through faith and being an advocate, you really can navigate the ups and downs of this journey. You know, in your weakness, his power is made perfect. I just pray for you, and I want you to continue to trust and advocate and help others on this walk with this journey of chronic illness. And again, as a Christian life coach, my goal is to help people who have experienced hurt and heartbreak because there is hope and healing. You don't have to stay broken. You can have breakthroughs. You don't have to stay a victim. You can be victorious. And I want you to walk that road to restoration because there is restoration in your life. Always, you can reach out to me for one-on-one coaching. I have a 12-week program called Trauma to Triumph, and that trauma is all types of different trauma, including chronic illness. There is a path to freedom and walking in abundance no matter what adversity that you are facing.